So I am going to move forward with our final session for today. Believe it or not, we are already at the end. And I have the honor and privilege of introducing Tamberly Conway from Conservation Connections. We are going to participate in a forest bathing activity. This is very important work. We are building on the work of those before us. We must be ready to continue the work. So we need to care for ourselves and each other. And that is a skill to learn and develop. So let's learn and practice this together with some sunbathing time. You will need your nature item that I asked you to bring earlier during our break session. And so I will now turn it over to Tamberly.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you so much for this lovely opportunity to share with you all just a taste of forest bathing. And supporting one another is just so critical. And as we are supporting one another, we're creating a resilience among ourselves and among the forests that we all serve and that we all benefit from each and every day in all of the communities we serve as well. And I was really inspired throughout this entire conversation today about the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece of this conversation that's been woven through this fabric. And I feel called to just tell a brief story of the linkage to the diversity aspect of the practice I'll be sharing today. And I'm so honored to have served for 12 years with the U.S. Forest Service in the Conservation Education Program in both Texas and ultimately in the Washington, D.C. office. And there is whenever I found this practice of forest therapy or forest bathing. And I thought when I went on my first walk, oh, I'm sure I've done this before just because I'm a nature girl and I've been teaching conservation education now for almost half of my life. And so I went on this walk. And as soon as I did, I realized that I'd never done this before. And speaking with supervisors such as Dr. Michiko Martin, Tennille Bustum, Debbie Pressman, they all agreed that this could be something a little outside of our box that we might be able to bring to the work in conservation education. And so they allowed me to actually become trained as a forest therapy guide. And throughout that time with the Forest Service, I was honored to have utilized some of the funding as a partnerships diversity and inclusion specialist to bring forth, under the guidance of Dr. Tennille Bustum, the very first ever bilingual forest therapy training. And this happened in November of 2019. I left the Forest Service in December of 2019, but this cohort of 22 people trained to become forest therapy guides, 15 of them actually graduated and are now serving as forest therapy guides in communities around the US, Latin America, and they have started to pulse this out into their own communities. What happened is a major shift with COVID. And at that time in March of last year, forest therapy guides around the world began to say, how can we continue to bring this practice to people in this kind of remote or virtual world? And so we began to do what we're about to do now. And it is bringing people into their own nearby nature connection, being guided into sensory connection, and really connecting to your own nearby nature. That's what Dr. Kathleen Wolf talks about all the time, connecting to nearby nature. And that helps us to pulse out into the conservation outside of our own space. And so if you haven't heard of forest therapy or forest bathing, it arises from Japan. And this term, forest bathing, shinrin yoku, is quite literally terminated as bathing in the atmosphere of the forest. And so as we stand or sit among trees and other plants, they are actually producing phytoncides, which are volatile chemicals in the air that are serving as their immune systems. And so when fungi or diseases, even insects, are attacking trees and other plants, they emit phytoncides. When we breathe in phytoncides, we also benefit. Our immune systems increase, natural killer cells are increased, reduced cortisol levels. And so this all links to a reduction of chronic disease issues. And so the Japanese Forest Service actually created this. Humans have done it since we inhabited the earth, but now it is a term of practice. And I serve as an association of nature and forest therapy trained guide. And we conduct this practice a bit differently. We guide you into invitations, and these are just that. I will be inviting you to move into sensory connection. And what we always say is that the forest is the therapist, the guide opens the doors. And so we feel that nature and the forest or any ecosystem in which you are located gives you the healing that you need. But it's not just about us, it's not just about healing people. It's not just about mental, physical, and emotional well being that we derive from the natural world and from our forests. But I truly believe that this is a practice that lends to the health of our forests, the health of our ecosystems, because people become much more connected and dive into a deep relationship with everything around them. And that gives them the initiative to become more interested in conservation and in moving into stewardship that supports the health of our forests and other ecosystems. And I'll note the work of Dr. Suzanne Simard. If you haven't heard of her, she's a professor at the University of British Columbia, and she identifies that a kind of a shift, a paradigm shift in the way that forests work, and that there are deep connections beneath us, beneath our forests, that are pulsing from the mother tree out into forests that help to support the health and well-being and resiliency of our forests. And so that they communicate using the mycelial connections around these root systems and serve to share nutrients, water, and energy among one another. And so I will invite all of you today to imagine yourselves. First, let me invite you to close your eyes or just gaze down at the ground, maybe holding the object or the being or whatever it is, or having it next to you so you can touch it, feel it, smell it, taste it, if you can taste it. And I'll first invite you to just close your eyes and imagine this Women's Forest Congress as that mother tree. We've talked so much today about the interconnections, the weaving together of who we are and the practices and the passions that we bring forth as women. And I invite you to first breathe deeply, opening and expanding your body. I wonder what it feels like to be breathed. I wonder how it feels for your chest to expand and your belly. And then upon the release, releasing that energy back into the earth, noticing your breath, noticing your body. And whether you're seated or you're standing, noticing how the earth holds you now. And then I invite you to imagine, to your imaginal sense, I invite you to imagine as if you are one of the trees in this community. It could be any tree. And as you become and imagine yourself as this tree, I invite you to open your crown, your branches and your leaves, inviting in the energy of the sun, bringing in the energy down into your trunk, creating a sense of resiliency, pulsing this energy down, imagining your feet and your toes, or if you're seated, imagining a root system extending beneath you, out, beneath the ground, sending down deep roots and ones just beneath the soil, holding you tightly, creating that resilience in you. And I wonder what your roots might find beneath the soil. I wonder what resources you might share with the others in this Women's Forest Congress community, in this community of trees. And I invite you to join forces with those energies, now bringing them, sharing them, bringing them back up into your trunk, your resiliency. And then inviting you to Come back to your breath, breathing in deeply, exhaling, noticing your sense of smell. Maybe turning your head from side to side, sniffing the air like a fox, or maybe your favorite furry friend, sniffing the air around you, whether you're inside or out, remembering that nature is everywhere, remembering that you are nature, we are nature. And then shifting to your sense of taste, remembering that our sense of smell brings back all of these memories, has a powerful concept of memory, and connecting that now to your sense of taste. Maybe tasting the air around you, maybe licking your lips, sensing any saltiness, anything sweet, noticing those sensations. And then moving back into breath, I invite you to notice the sounds of your own body and maybe how those sounds connect to the sounds around you, be inside or out, noticing your connections to your nearby nature, your sound. And then moving the sound down, moving your hands, maybe pulling them together. And if you brought something with you that is nature to you, I invite you to hold this in your hand or hands. Maybe bringing it to your heart. If you didn't bring anything, again, bringing your hands to your heart, feeling your own heartbeat, feeling the texture of your clothing, maybe even lifting the object, if you brought an object with you, lifting it to you to notice the sensations around you. Notice how that object might feel in your hand or against your body. And then maybe dropping your hands and just noticing your space that you're in now. Noticing this object, noticing what is around you, using your body radar as a sensory mechanism. When we open our senses, we open to other senses, intuition, creativity, so many senses that we as humans tend to lose track of as we have removed ourselves from the natural world. Again, noticing the slight shift, maybe in a breeze or a temperature against your skin. And then inviting you to turn into a direction to where you feel most called. Just using, again, your body radar. Sometimes we use our intuition, we use our body radar, our hearts, to make decisions. And instead of being in our heads, let's go to our hearts and to our bodies and turning in the direction to which you feel most called. In that space, I invite you in just a moment, but not just yet. I'll invite you to open your eyes. But when you do, I'll invite you to open your eyes and see this place as if you have seen it for the very first time. And I will also invite you, as you notice the beings around you, whoever they may be, I invite you to notice and wonder if they might be noticing you too. So when you're ready, I invite you to very slowly and gently open your eyes and just notice what you're noticing in this space. And now I invite you to just share. And this is part of forest bathing or forest therapy, in that we come back into a circle. And in this circle, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to share. It's an opportunity to share a movement, emotion, a sound, a share in silence. It's very open, all is welcome. And you can even share an image here, share your camera, showing what maybe is significant to you. What are you noticing? And this is a wonderful opportunity to create cultural repair, because we have the opportunity to share among others and also to be witnessed when we share. And normally we would go around the virtual room remotely, but we have quite a number of folks here on this call. But if you would like to share and chat some of what you are noticing, we would love to see what you are noticing. And if anyone feels called to come off of mute, I wonder if you would like to share. What are you noticing? Amy, are we able to remove folks from mute if they wish to share?
Yes, if you'd like to share, you can either take yourself off mute or raise your hand and I can take you off mute.
And we see that Kathy says touch is important. Yes, the sense of touch, noticing our connection to all that is around, noticing the colors and the shifts that take place in our natural world. Mackenzie shares that appreciation for the light coming through my office window and the view outside to the little urban garden I created in our back patio. Thank you for sharing, Mackenzie. Thank you for sharing, Kathy. And again, really deeply connecting to our own nature space wherever we are. And I acknowledge the people who trained in this first training of the bilingual training. These are the individuals who helped to propel this practice of nature and forest therapy in a remote setting through the U.S. Forest Service. And we're so grateful to the Forest Service for advancing this practice. This is actually where I met some of the Women's Forest Congress members, Katie, actually, during a U.S. Forest Service International Program office event in partnership with many others. And they have really helped to propel this practice among diverse communities worldwide. And so we're just extremely grateful. We have some more shares, just Elizabeth shares that just being open and intentional about noticing our surroundings. Yes, that's very powerful, Elizabeth, thank you. Jessica shares, today is all about the sun for me today. Thank you, Jessica. And Daisy is actually serving as an Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guide, and she is a U.S. Forest Service employee. And we're grateful for the work that Daisy is doing to bring this practice to young people through the Resource Assistant Program. Young people are coming into the Forest Service and searching for ways to contribute to the forest and to the people they serve. And thank you so much, Daisy. Noticing the September sun, light changing, gentle breeze, chickens clucking. Ahi, Nisoni, Tamberly, thank you, Daisy. And I'm just so grateful to those who tended this land before all of us who are here today and who are still here, the Kickapoo, Chickasaw. There are many indigenous tribes who have tended this land where I stand today. It's a new place for me. Grateful for all of those who've tended this land. And Rebecca shares that noticing nature that isn't green and will show up in front of a green screen. Thank you, Rebecca. Amy. Oh, Amy's asking, inviting people to come off mute if they'd like to share. Lara shares the smell of the two native flowers I picked from my prairie garden, New England aster and tall coreopsis. Wendy says, I first heard my dog breathing. She had a furry friend, my beautiful spider plant, and I noticed my husband standing at his desk, which he never does. Thank you, Wendy. And Kathy, grateful for the oxygen from plants. Yes, Kathy, thank you. Oh, hi, Regine. Good to see you here. It was extremely refreshing to visit Denali National Park earlier this year. I live in Hot Springs National Park, the first of all MPS in the nation. Denali and the other land is the largest and most wild of the national parks. It was refreshing to be able to exist in an environment that is not heavily altered by the hands of man, to benefit human-centric goals and not covered up with people. I understand and appreciate the benefits that a managed landscape can provide, but I would also love for there to be more balance. Yes, thank you so much, Regine. Amanda shares the weight of a wooden award on my wall and the weight of living up to the woman, Molly Beatty, for whom it was named. Beautiful. Yes, congratulations, Amanda, as Kathy says here. So thank you again so much to each of you for sharing and to becoming connected with your own individual space in the world, be it indoors and your own nearby nature, or again, being able to pulse outdoors and take this time for yourselves and to connect with others and sharing these opportunities to support one another. I feel very supported today by each of you. I appreciate and value sharing your stories so openly, honestly, and vulnerably. And I feel that this practice is yet another way, another tool that we can utilize to share with one another and to share with our own natural world and to give back in reciprocity for all that we receive each and every day from our forests and from all of those ecosystems, all of the ecosystem services, but yet the relationship that we create with our natural world around us is one of the most valuable things that we can share. So thank you all once again, and we can keep looking for shares in the chat. And with that, I will turn the nature microphone over back to Amy and or.
I have you, Kimberly.
Oh, you got me. Thank you so much, Armenia. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for facilitating such a therapeutic exercise. And as women, sometimes we forget what it means to decompress and truly practice self-care. This is one way to be in a safe space and center our thoughts through practicing mindfulness. Believe it or not, we have reached the conclusion of our session. We had incredible, instrumental women present today on leadership for equity and inclusion, workforce opportunities for increasing recruitment, retention, and leadership, women as catalysts for change, addressing today's greatest forest challenges, and supporting each other in the forest sector and community. So, ladies, you ask, what's next? I will now turn it over to Jessica Leahy, the Henry W. Saunders Distinguished Professor in Forestry at the University of Maine and representing the Women's Forest Congress Advisory Council, to give us an exciting update on the in-person Women's Forest Congress in 2022. Jessica, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, I am very excited to announce where the in-person Women's Forest Congress is going to be held next year. And it is going to be in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And it is going to be there for a variety of very important reasons that all pointed towards going to Minneapolis. First of all, there's the social and cultural reasons for going there. In May of 2020, Minneapolis came to be the epicenter of the Black Lives Movement. with the murder of George Floyd. And then there were global protests, and it put Minneapolis and racism in national and international spotlights. That is something that the Women's Forest Congress, our goals relate to universal equity and inclusion as well. And we know that it comes from inequities that exist in the world. And as Minneapolis grapples with that, and the Women's Forest Congress also works towards that, it seems like a great place to go. It's also worth noting that the location of the meeting in Minneapolis will be on Dakota land. There are 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, of the Ojibwe and Sioux, of which the Dakota are a part of. There were geographic reasons, logistical reasons for choosing Minneapolis as well. There's an international airport there that is convenient for people on the West Coast and the East Coast, as well as our Canadian neighbors to access. It's within driving distance of a number of universities. So we have the University of Minnesota right there. We've got University of Wisconsin-Madison, Stevens Point, Leech Lake Tribal College, Itasca Community College, Iowa. I'll be able to bring students from the University of Maine because Minneapolis is so convenient. I think everyone will really love Minneapolis and Minnesota. It's a heavily forested state. There's 17 million acres. There are state, county, federal forests. There are lots of forest conservation and environmental agencies, nonprofits, and companies, and many of them are centrally located because of the state capital being in St. Paul. You will really love the green spaces that Minneapolis, St. Paul has to offer, wonderful nightlife, a global market that we'll be able to go to. Field tours will be excellent. The hotel, the Intercontinental Hotel, is a brand new facility built 3 years ago, and they have been working with the Women's Forest Congress since we had to cancel before the pandemic. And so they've worked with the group. They understand what we're looking for in terms of being able to connect with each other in their space. So for all of those people, forest, and logistical reasons, we're going to Minneapolis.
Thank you, Jessica. And I know I am very excited about being in person in Minneapolis, and I hope that you all are excited as well and going to meet me there in 2022. As we close, don't forget to mark your calendars right now. As always, this is a collaborative effort, so watch out for opportunities to engage in working groups and to support capacity and fundraising initiatives. We are off and running. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, take good care of yourselves, stay safe, healthy, and continue to share the great work that the Women's Forest Congress is doing. You all have a great week and see you on December the 8th.